No worries.
Welcome back. I'm Atlantis Wolf, and I'm here today interviewing my teacher, Linda Starwolf, on the question she gets asked the most. What is shamanic breathwork? So I wanted to start out by saying, welcome, Linda. Thank you very much for
Mhm.
taking the interview. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate your time. I know that there's a lot of requests on your time and a lot of pulling on your time, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Atlantis Wolf.
So we're going to walk into shamanic breathwork. We're just going to go from the nuts and bolts, and then we're going to walk into the deeper end of transformation and the more metaphysical aspects. But before we begin, I want people to understand who they're talking to. When they're hearing the words out of Star Wolf, they're not hearing one person's story. It's not a single story with a single history. What they're hearing is the spiral lineage of indigenous Seneca Wolf clan traditions, the Groffs who studied shamanic, or excuse me, holotropic breath work specifically to see if they could recreate the altered states of LSD with breath work, not through anything artificial, through the works of Jackie Small, who empowered all of us to have confidence about the intuitive healer inside of us, and 30 years of elders, teachers, philosophers, all amalgamated into this living library, this treasure chest of breathwork techniques, breathwork philosophy, and frankly, the history of something that really is new to the world. This isn't something that she came to on a whim or yesterday. It's been 30 years. So when you hear the words, I want to make sure that everyone is understanding the depth of where all this is coming from and to let the words resonate with them. So to begin, I'll start out with a nice, easy question. Who gave you the name of Starwolf?
Mm. First of all, thank you for having me and doing this interview. I really appreciate being able to share with others who really want to know about this work because it's my passion. And it's that same passion that led me many years ago to discover that my spirit name was Star Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
And where that began, and before I can just say who, I need to back up a little bit and say
Yes.
why. And I was working with a dear friend, a Cherokee sister, who knew that I had some deep grief about the loss of my grandmother when I was 12 years old, the grandmother that had held my feet to the earth and helped nurture this weird little kid and keep me on the planet. And that I was missing her very dearly in my life. And long after, many years after she passed, after I was 12, um, that actually took me on a whole journey, of course, that led into some addiction and things, and that led into healing for myself. That there was still, after all the healing I had done in my 20s and in my early 30s, there was still this hole that when I talked about my grandmother, my Cherokee healer sister friend could see that. And she said, we need to do some grandmother work. And so she did some healing work with me that day. I did, some breath work with her. We were exchanging healing with one another. And then we had these little tape recorders where you put the two buttons and you tape, and she taped her session with me of taking me into an underground kiva
Mm-hmm.
where I was to meet a grandmother, and that I was going to listen to this at home every day for 30 days, and seeking a grandmother of some kind to come to me to fill that hole that had been missing since I was 12. And so it was a beautiful ceremony she did that day, and we did a sweat later on, just the two of us. And um, so I went home and I started the daily practice. I was working in the mental health center, and every day I would come home or at the treatment center that I worked at, and I would lie down on the floor in my little room, my little meditation room, a little altar, and my husband and my son in the other room. And I would lie down and listen to this little tape. And usually I'd be tired and I kind of go into a dreamy state. And
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of come out of it and just feel kind of like, oh, oh, that was really good, but I still haven't seen a grandmother. Maybe I had a vision of this or an image of that, or maybe I fell asleep because I was tired. But on one day, I've went into one of those, subliminal states where you're not here and you're not there and you're in between the worlds and you know it, but you're just totally relaxed. And there's also kind of this, interesting. And the
Mm-hmm.
next thing I knew as I was listening to this guided journey, is that I'm in the underground kiva as always directed. Maybe this is like day 14 out of 30 or something. And all of a sudden, I hear um, this voice. And then I see myself sitting on the cave floor with my head on someone's lap and their hand on my head, stroking my hair and saying, ah, my little gentle wolf, my star wolf, gentle star wolf. And I looked up into this beautiful woman's face, this elder with these shining, twinkling eyes and this long white braided hair. And she's looking at me just the way my grandmother had looked at me with that you are the bee's knees sort of look. And I'm just in love. And then all of a sudden I thought, oh, this is that grandmother that I'm supposed to be, and that she just, she was gone. And I was like, darn. And I came back and I was just blown away. And I quickly took out a little piece of paper. I still have it. And I wrote Star Wolf. And I drew a little wolf with a little star and a moon over it.
Oh,
And I had that little paper. And I didn't know where that would take me. I had no idea where it would take me. So you skip forward some years forward because this is before Google and before the internet and before everybody had personal computers. This is none of that, right?
no.
Uh, and you're still using corded phones, you know, and calling for information and not wanting to make long distance calls because it costs too much. So anyway, there was no way I could find it at that time. But that was, I'll just say, without talking about any further here, that's where the name came from. And I'm going to fast forward years later when I wound up on the reservation because I spoke to the woman over the phone who told me that grandmother Twyla had asked that I come there to be with her.
Mm-hmm.
When I walked up onto the back of her house, and she came out the door and walked towards me, and she came over and she hugged me and she looked at me, and I almost fainted because it was the woman in my vision. And she said, I gave you a name. What is your name? And I said, Star Wolf? And she said, yes. Now come on in the house. And I thought, I just stood there for a minute. I didn't move. And I thought, okay, if she knew my name, why didn't she just say, hello, Star Wolf? And she looked at me again and she said, and I gave it to you in an underground kiva. Come on in the house.
I love it.
So that's a little bit of a long piece, but it's
No, but
important.
it's an important piece. It's a very
Yeah.
important piece because it honors where your heart is and where this work is coming from. And it really speaks into the roots, into that tap root, that deepest root of where it all started. So that's absolutely perfect. And I love that story. That is so beautiful.
It always brings tears to my eyes,
Oh,
especially when I remember my grandmother who literally saved my life as a child, and then grandmother Twyla. And one last thing about that Atlantis is their birthday is this is 2 days apart, the same year. That she would have been the same age as my grandmother, and 2 days apart in December.
that's incredible.
Yeah,
Like you love to say, you can't make this up.
that's right.
Okay, so on the nuts and bolts side, let's say that you have a scenario where you have a single mom who has signed up for a shamanic breathwork session, whether it's online or it's with a certified, well, both would be with a certified facilitator, but either online or in person. And she is about to walk out the door and she has a 9-year-old child. And she says to the child, I'm going to go do a shamanic breathwork session. And the child says, what's that? How would you explain this to a 9-year-old child in the simplest nugget of a way?
Well, it's interesting because I think all of us are about 9 years old when we ask that question.
Mhm.
If we ask that question, we're already probably feeling a little bit of magic, a little bit of nervousness,
Mm.
and a little bit of, ooh, this sounds really interesting and I might want to do this, but what is it,
Yep.
and what does it have to do with me? Why am I even interested in this? So if somebody's asking me that, the first thing I know is that there's something that's already happened and a calling that's happening. Because the first thing that happens for breath work, I believe, because of my own experience and many people around me, is that people are called.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step to shamanic breath work is someone feeling a calling to discover more about themselves, more than their everyday rush hour traffic consciousness is bringing them, more than the commercials, more than the advertisements, maybe even more at some level, even though they have a beloved family, more than what their family's able to give them or their jobs or those kinds of things. There's something that's calling people to the breath work. So what is it?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, what is it? Is it the word shamanic? Is it the word breath work? Whatever it might be. What is calling people? And it's a deep desire, I believe, to remember who it is we really are.
Mm-hmm.
Because in remembering who we really are, we discover and we remember that we came here with a sacred purpose. So shamanic breath work in its, and I'll describe it, but in its finest moment, if you will, in its quintessential essence, is here to help us remember who it is we really are beneath all the stuff that gets loaded on through our childhood and society and
Mm-hmm.
domestication, and all of that. So the breath work itself is really a very simple process. It's not complicated.
Mm-hmm.
I do shamanic ceremony around it with smudging and calling in directions and things, but the breathing itself is really about having a safe and sacred space, which means a comfy blanket and pillow, where you're going to be comfortable and having, some comfortable clothes on so you can move it around, to
Mm-hmm.
have some tissue for yourself in case you want to blow your nose or cry, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and to have a little art pad with you, and have some crayons or a journal or something. You don't have to do that, but it's nice to be able to do that, just like I did with when I came back from my journey that I
Yeah.
was describing a while ago, so that you can write stuff down, really quickly or draw or whatever you want to do, and to get yourself very comfortable and to do some breathing. And I'll demonstrate that in just a moment. But to prepare yourself to go into what I would say kind of a dream state, an
Mm-hmm.
in between the worlds, just like I described,
Mm-hmm.
in between this world and the other worlds, even if you don't know what those other worlds are, that
Yes.
you're preparing yourself to go into an altered state, but you're not using anything except your own intention, your willingness to surrender to the process, maybe some music, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the breathing. That's what you're using to go into an altered state. And I know it's kind of some people like, really? That's all you're going to do? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, you try it and let's see from there.
So,
And of course, yeah, with that breathing, I was just going to say, with that breathing, that's going to create your altered state.
mm-hmm. So after you wave goodbye to your child and say, I'm going to go remember who I am, I love you, I'll be back later. Where, you go to either your own, the space that you created, or, if it's in person, a space that the facilitator created. And it sounds like you would have like a yoga mat or somewhere, like a mat or
Yeah.
something, and a pillow, blanket, something comfortable, and an eye mask. Is that right?
Yeah, if it's nighttime or if
Mm-hmm.
you're in a darkened room, you really don't need that. But a lot of times, you'll be in a situation where there's a lot of light coming in. So you don't want to be distracted. You want
Right.
to unplug everything. You want to turn off the phone. You want to,
Mm-hmm.
maybe lock the doors. You want to, I like to have my dogs and cat around me, but, if that's going to annoy you, if they're going to, like, cat's going to be climbing on you or something. In other words, create your space, so your time for
Mm-hmm.
you, so that you can really give yourself um, really intense, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
attention
Yes.
and
And
permission.
if if I remember, a lot of the indigenous cultures that, because shaman is a word that's been around as long as people have been around, but I also remember reading that shaman means one who sees in the dark. And I love the fact that whether it's nighttime and you're doing a breathwork session or you have an eye cover, you feel immediately connected to that part of you, that natural, intuitive part of you that is that inner shaman that is ready to see in the dark and maybe never had an opportunity. Maybe, there
Mm.
just wasn't the environment for it. Um, so imagine, just for people who have never done breath work, let's imagine that there's an in-person breathwork session with 20 people. Maybe it's on your property in the air temple. Could you describe the scene in the middle of a shamanic breathwork? All the breathers are on the floor. The music is going. You've set the sacred container. Everyone is there. What's it like?
Well, it's certainly not boring, and and very highly entertaining. But many years ago, um, when I was teaching this at Esalen, and somebody came through and Esalen Institute is out in Big Sur, California. It's a well-known, famous institute that teaches, cutting edge ways to evolve and open consciousness and awaken consciousness. So we're teaching shadow work, which
Mm-hmm.
is about, the unknown parts of yourself, and doing breath work and inner child work. But anyway, somebody walked by, right, just what you said, in the middle of a breath work, and they just opened the door. They heard music because we like to use the music to help open up the
And
chakras,
it's
open
pretty
up the
loud,
human.
right?
Oh, it's loud, it's intense. It can sound a little bit like almost like a if you were in a movie theaters and the indoor movie theaters, you walk through the hall and sometimes you can hear booming and noises behind the doors, that kind of thing. And they stuck their head in, and then that I didn't hear what they said because one of the facilitators quickly ran over, to say this is private or whatever. And they said, this looks like some sort of astral or or some sort of psych ward. Psych hospital, And I said, well, I have worked in the psych hospitals a lot, so I understand that. And it does look like that, except these people are intentionally going into this state of consciousness, going a little bit
Voluntarily.
going a little bit crazy to find ourselves, sometimes we have to get out of our rational mind. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what it looks like. We encourage people that what comes up, if they need to move, if they need to shake, if all of a sudden, just whatever kind of this natural urge,
Mm-hmm.
the way a dog will stretch or yawn
Mm-hmm.
or, just whatever. And to let whatever visual images that show up behind your eyelids, just to follow that and see,
Mm-hmm.
be curious, see where
Mm-hmm.
it's going to take you. I remember somebody saying, I was saying, I'm seeing colors I've never seen before that don't exist, you know, or I'm speaking in some sort of language that I don't know, or I'm seeing myself, except I'm a man from the 16th century,
Oh.
but I know it's me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of things become available to people. Or
Mm-hmm.
I just had a conversation with my grandmother who's on the other side, and I'm crying because it's so real, you know? So
Yeah.
all the places that people have gone with psychedelics, whether it's been, LSD or plant medicine itself, those kind of things. These are the places that are natural states within us that we have access to. And who knew that it could come about through a method of breathing,
Yeah.
a method of breathing.
And I think the music being so loud gives you permission to scream or cry or wail or move into that place because you can't really hear yourself. You're just hearing the music. Um, and then
Yes.
and then how do the facilitators come into that process?
Yeah, well, and what you said about the music is true. We don't just put oh, this is a cool piece of music, and oh, here's another piece of music. We choreograph the music ahead of time, just like someone would choreograph the music for a movie.
Mm-hmm.
All movies have soundtracks. So every breath work we do, we have a theme in our back of our mind, even if nobody else gets the theme, that's okay. But we have a theme and we weave the music together to start at the base of your energy field and go all the way through so that you can feel it, the journey
Mm-hmm.
quality of it, but your heart and then into the upper chakras, the seven energies, the main energies of the body. So
Mm-hmm.
that music is moving things, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's activating emotions. Although sometimes people are totally still, a lot of people move about. So when we have people, and we have a day with people where we have the opportunity not just to kind of give them a taste, where they go in and maybe have some visions or feel deeply relaxed or feel a healing of some kind, but to really give them the opportunity to move. And with that, we incorporate body work. And
Yes.
so with the body work, the facilitators who are certified shamanic breathwork facilitators, they are what we called walking the floor.
Mm-hmm.
And as they walk the floor, they're very quietly and respectfully going over to where someone's lying on their mat and sitting or standing with them for a little while, paying close attention, just noticing their breathing, noticing if there's a tear, noticing if they're kind of hitting on a pillow, or if they're rocking, or if they're laughing, or they're just being really still and deep, wherever people are, or if they're speaking in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay because the music is, as you said, it's intense, it's
Mm-hmm.
journey like. And so everything that anybody's doing kind of sounds like part of the music. So really nobody's really paying attention to anybody else. They're in their own journey, you know. They
Right.
might hear it but go, that's good. Okay. You know, but it's in their own journey. And sometimes somebody else will trigger somebody in their journey and to go even someplace else. But the facilitators are coming around just to kind of be there for people in case something comes up where they're feeling stuck or where they're feeling maybe really sad about the death of their loved one,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they just need to be held, or maybe they just need to open up and see that open their eyes and see someone's there,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so that they're not feeling safe because memories of abuse from their childhood came up, you know, or even something as an adult that's happened and that's been abusive, those kinds of things. So the whole gamut of being in bliss or being in reliving a trauma or drama, all of it works together for that person's individual journey. And I trust that exactly what's supposed to come up for that person. And those things, both those things can come up within the same person in the
Mm-hmm.
same breath work. Often does. But I really trust with my whole heart that whatever comes up, if it's on its way up, it's on its way out. And
Ah,
it's meant to be seen and made conscious. And facilitators are just loving people who've done the work and who do the work for themselves and who now have learned how to help facilitate the work. And if a person really doesn't need anything, we don't touch them. But if they do need something, we're there to help.
perfect. Um, I do remember a breath work that I was fortunate enough to be a part of that was maybe 20 or so people. And what I remember is there was one person in the group, and she would just laugh the whole time, from start to finish. She laughed the whole time, which I loved. I also wanted to point out that you were talking about the difference with breath work and plant medicine, and how, you know, with plant medicine, you really are not in control of how long it's going to metabolize in your body and maybe where it's going to take you, and it'll open up neural pathways. But you know, the difference, and I want to make it clear to people with the breath work, and you can speak more into this though, is that you are in control. You haven't given that control to plant medicine. You're having an altered state experience. But if you're going into a place that you're, it's not even just about discomfort, because if it's coming up and out, then you know and you feel it. But it's your breath and you are in control of it. Would you say that that's accurate?
Yes, I would. And I appreciate you bringing that up because one of the first things I want to say is that there's many, many ways to go into altered states. You know, when you have a baby, you go into an altered state.
Mm-hmm.
When you die, you go into an altered state. When you're born, you go into an altered state. If you run really fast, you go into an altered state. Sugar can certainly take you into an altered state. And of course, we know substances can take you into altered state, whether it's caffeine or alcohol or marijuana or whatever it might be. And I'm not anti plant medicines at all. But one of the things I've found for myself is I am a finely tuned creature. I'm extremely sensitive. And many people are very empathic and sensitive these days.
Yeah.
You know, it seems that the last 20, 30, 40 years, there have been a lot of very sensitive people born onto this planet to be perhaps to become empathetic, more empathetic to our planet. Um, and one of the things I've noticed is that sometimes people get very strung out, whether they take psychedelics, you know. And again, I'm not against psychedelic use. I've used psychedelics. way long time ago. And I've also done plant medicines many years ago. And all of those were beneficial to me in different ways. You know, one of the benefits could be argued is that you don't have control. And for somebody that has a lot of control and can't let go and can't surrender, that it will take them whether they want to go or not. It's like when you get on the roller coaster, right? It's like, all right, I'm in. There's, you know, and there you go. It may be a lot of fun, and you may wet yourself before you get off, you know.
Yep.
You know, and some people get off and go, that's wonderful. I want to do it again. And maybe they want to do it too much, if you know what I'm saying.
Yes.
Or some people get off and go, I will never do that again. I was, you know, that sort of thing. So, but I am not critical of it. For me, what I discovered is that every place that those things can take me, my breath can take me. And that's very empowering.
Yeah.
And should the house catch on fire in the middle of the breath work, if there was an earthquake in the middle of the breath work,
Yeah.
if whatever, you know, if I have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the breath work, I can, unlike other experiences I've had, I can actually get up, go to the restroom, run out of the burning house, grab my computer on the way out, you know, and call the fire department. And I'm still altered, you know, but my experience also is that I really have a deeper memory and impression that I bring back with me instead of being experiencing going, wow, and then coming back and not having as clear of a memory about it. There's a way in which it's very present, and I can write about it, draw pictures of it. And of course, the ayahuasca shamans do that. You know, they draw these wonderful, you know, mandalas and that sort of thing. And the other thing I really love about it is that it's user friendly for anybody. You know, there's very few people that I would not recommend it for.
So one of the things, so that's perfectly bringing up the next thing. One of the things that I noticed since I make it my business to do different kinds of breath work to understand where, you know, everyone is on the spectrum is I've been in breath works where the music stops, the Zoom session stops, and it's just like that. But what happens in a shamanic breath work when the music stops?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things, first of all, is, you know, part of what makes it shamanic is that I know we advertise it and call it a workshop, but for me, it's a ceremony. It's a sacred ceremony because it is a blend of shamanism and breath work, the two together, shamanic breath work. So for me, it is a tool, it is a technique, it is all those things. It's a method, but primarily it's the medicine. It is a ceremony. So we go into that in a sacred space, in a sacred way, and set the sacred space itself, you know, giving people instruction, putting the music on, having facilitators, having you know, people set up in a safe place. When they come out, we play soft music at the end. You know, it's not just drumming the whole time. At the end, it's very high chakra music to take people kind of into a potentially healing and blissful place, especially if they've been hit some really hard stuff. So with this heart music and then this blissful kind of music. And then we bring it down a notch and we do the heartbeat of the drum. We take people in at the beginning to the heartbeat of the drum. This is called entrainment, that people have a signal they're going in, and that when they hear it again, they're coming out. And there's something that happens in the brains, and I think it's probably even genetic memory from the lost tribes that our, you know, ancestors were in, that's our lineage, that we remember that. We remember the drumming that took us into altered states. And so at the end, you hear that heartbeat of the drum, and it's like, oh, it's time to come back. And so people tend to kind of like make a landing like a bird, you know, like coming back into consciousness. And as they do, then they're invited to just lie there for a little bit and slowly open their eyes. And as they do that, there's many times very clear remembrance of their whole experience, but they truly realize they have been in an altered state because they go, that's not something I would have ever made up or thought about, or I
Right.
didn't remember, but I remember now, those kinds of things. So, um,
And I think that that does
yeah.
make shamanic breath work very unique. And I credit your background with so many years in the mental health field, that being, you know, your foundation for making people feel so safe and so comfortable that they can go so deep, fly so high, but also because they know at the end of the journey that they do have that soft landing, that they are going to be able to process what just happened to them. They're not going to be just cut off from it. You know, it's not going to be so severe, that there will be someone who is an expert in active listening and looking for signs to make sure they look grounded, look them in the eyes, listen to the music, bring them back, let them draw some mandalas, let them write some words, and bring them back in a gentle way, because they know, as opposed to what you're saying with the roller coaster where you just come to the stop and it's just, you know, take off your seatbelt and get out. I don't know of another breathwork technique that honors the mental health and the processing aspect of it so tenderly and so completely that everyone feels seen and held and really just honored for that unique person who they are. I think that that's
Thank you, Atlantis. That really touches me that you're saying that. And it's crucial to me that we do no harm. In some of the shamanic traditions in the past, I mean, people died during their initiations.
yep.
That's just the way it was. But we're in a new era and a new time, and I don't want anybody dying while I'm doing shamanic breath work. There's enough suffering on the planet already. And part of doing the work is to transform the suffering into healing and to transformation so that people can be about the business of stepping into their sacred purpose to help heal our world and each other. So our facilitators are trained, to safety first,
Mm-hmm.
transformation second.
Mm-hmm.
So, and though some people say, well, but transformation should happen whether it's safe or not, I'm like, not on my time, because I believe in the wisdom of the butterfly, that when he's a caterpillar, he doesn't just go out there and lay himself on a branch and pop his wings and dissolve in midair. He or she creates a safe container that can even withhold by one strand. Hurricanes have not been able to blow them off branches when
Mm-hmm.
houses fall down. They create a safe container for themselves to dissolve, to go through an alchemical process, and to emerge as a new iteration of themselves. And that's what we want to have happen for people. They come in kind of mushy like that little caterpillar. They go into the safe space, the cocoon of that safety.
Yeah.
And yes, they have a powerful alchemical transformation with the breath and everything. But when they come out the other side, even if there's still very much what we call cooking, that we tenderly, after they do a little bit of art or something in that way, bring them into the process groups where they can then share and come back to earth, come back to grounding within themselves, and be able to integrate the material instead of like, oh, here's just a journey and it's a cool image, but to integrate it so that it actually becomes medicine and information for change, outer change, not just a trip.
Right. So do you think, because I feel like breathwork has exploded and it's become something so common, the way that yoga had sort of a rise, and all of a sudden people went from thinking yoga only took place in India to it's on every corner right next to your Starbucks. Do you think that breathwork is more needed and more wanted now more than ever because of where we are as a population on the planet?
I do. I think about you have to realize I came of age in the 1960s. And in the 1960s, the big thing was transcendental meditation because the
Mm.
Beatles did it. They did TM and went and hung out with the Maharishi in India and that sort of thing. So everybody that I knew that was my age, it was a teenager, that was a hippie, which was almost everybody around me at that time, our aspiring hippies, wanted to be TM people. We wanted to,
Sure.
and so that was where the breath began. We began to study the breath and the breathing and the clearing of the mind and those sort of things. So meditation was huge, and all kinds of schools of meditation started up. It was around that time, because meditation involves breath, that breath work started to be born too,
Hmm.
and guided journeys, guided imagery, you
Yeah.
know, because years before that, Carl Jung was teaching about dream work, but you had to wait to have a dream, right? But now, guided imagery and with people, playing music and like Shakti Gawain, and she's on the other side now, but taught us how to use our imagination and how to, through the voice or something, to do creative imagining. Um, and so it's like there's been this evolution. So everybody was doing creative visualization and guided imagery, and that was edgy. They forbid me to do it in the mental health center where I worked because that was too hoodoo. Now everybody and their mother in the mental health field uses guided imagery. But no, not then. It's like, no, that's too weird, you know? And so, I had a little candle did guided imagery, and they said, if you do that, we'll have to fire you. And I'm like, okay. so, so,
At least I'll
and
sleep at night.
I know, it's like, and then of course the next big thing was yogurt and yoga.
Yeah, true.
And there was, yeah, I have a friend who says to me that I think it was the 1970s or something, you could look in the New York City phone book.
Hmm.
And if you look for yoga in the whole city, there were like two, but there were about five yogurt shops. So there was, yogurt used to be bigger. But anyway, and now she said every other page is like, or whatever, every corner is yoga. So
Yeah.
yoga has really had its big heyday now. And I would say um, in the past 2 or 3 years,
Yeah.
all of a sudden breathwork went boom. And so
Hmm.
it went from there being like, it felt like maybe 4 or 5 or 6 mainstreams leading up to now of breath work. Not to say that there weren't others, but that were known pretty well. And then all of a sudden now there's this, everybody else. It's like, Sunday morning breathing, you know, uh, blue light
Sunrise,
breathing.
sunset, all of it.
you know,
But
it's popping up.
you got to give yoga credit, because I think for shamanic breath work, that is the easiest audience, because they already know how to get in touch and become
Yes,
embodied. They know how to lay down on a mat. They know that there is an awareness that they can sort of switch on and switch off. And
yes.
I think
And
it's,
they're using the breath,
and they're
using the
always
breath.
using the breath, which is wonderful. Last question. Let's say, hypothetically, that someone had an amazing experience in their breath work and they wanted to become a certified shamanic breathwork facilitator. How would they begin that journey?
So the first thing, just as you've said, is they have an experience and they come out and they go, wow, I'm going to do this. That means they've had a calling. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what happened to me, not with shamanic breath work, because that's my own brand of breath work. But
Mhm.
many years ago, when I came out of my first holotropic breath work session in the Red Roof Inn in Nashville, Tennessee, where there were 350 of us that breathed that day.
Like an ashram,
Okay.
you know.
It was, yeah. The whole place smelled like a burnt cigarette, ashtray. But anyway, but I came out of my breath work and I said, I don't really know what this was. I had no idea. I hadn't read anything. I listened to the talk, but I didn't really understand it. It was foreign words to me. But I came out of that experience and I just said, I'm doing this. And everybody would look at me. I couldn't, my eyes just rolled around my head and I said, I'm doing this. And they're like, that's nice. Now tell us what happened. I'm like, I'm doing this. About all I could, I was so altered, that was about all I could say. But I heard the call.
Mhm.
So if someone feels, when somebody has this experience of like, wow,
Mhm.
okay, like you eat someplace, you go, I'm going to eat there again.
Yep.
Okay. Wow, you have been called. And if that happens, you know, there's a way in which things will open up for you to do this. Because sometimes people say, well, I can't take the time off from work because there's training I'll speak into. I can't take the time work off, or I'm not going to be able to afford to do it, or my kids are too little. The last group we had, the woman was breastfeeding her child the whole time of our training. It's like, it's like people figure it out, that sort of thing. But um, obviously, we have a training program,
Mm-hmm.
and the first piece is called SHIP. SHIP, SHIP, okay? Shamanic Healing Initiatory Process.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started teaching breath work and the places that I went to, this wasn't necessarily what people did. But now I saw the reason why we need to do this. People initially were just learning skills. They were learning how to do body work or how to play
Mm-hmm.
some music or how to do art or how to touch people or how to, hold the space, which was wonderful.
Right.
But sometimes they did not really have a clear understanding of how to integrate all this material they had found about themselves. And they really did need more kind of therapy,
Yeah.
but not in the traditional sense. So this is why I created SHIP. I was born premature, so I created the program first and then said, that's not grounded enough. We've got to go back here and we've got to help people have psychological awareness. That's why when I say it's shamanic breath work, but it's a shamanic psycho-spiritual process.
Mm-hmm.
It's shamanic, it's psychological, and it's spiritual.
Because you have to
So
heal yourself before you're going to go out and hold space for other people.
you got it. And the psyche, the soul,
Mm-hmm.
has had a few ups and downs this lifetime and other lifetimes. So by doing SHIP, it's 5 initiations plus one more that's imaginal cells, but 5 initiations to discover and recover, remember who you are, mixed in with breath work. But it includes psychological processes and digging deep and integrating the information. And that's your first level of training.
Mm-hmm.
The second level of training is now that you've gotten a map for how to do ongoing shamanic psycho-spiritual work for yourself, and because we're always healing and growing.
Yeah.
Now we're going to teach you the actual components of the shamanic breathwork process itself. Even though you know them from breathing, we're going to give you the, Wizard of Oz, pull back the curtain. Here's what you're learning, and here's how to do this. Here's how to hold these spaces for people and help people to integrate. And that's level 2. So
That's
it's these
how to
two
cook up your own
programs.
secret sauce.
Yes, how to make your own sauce, your own special ingredients. So these two programs prepare you to go and start facilitating shamanic breathwork for other people. And it gives you, by knowing yourself psychologically
Mm-hmm.
and grounded within yourself and having those kinds of skills that's the way you best learn how to facilitate other people, is to be facilitated.
Yes.
So by being in with our facilitators and learning how to hold the space and how to ask questions or dig deeper or whatever needs to help a person finish a process or give them some suggestions, by learning how to do that, you can then feel confident, instead of feeling like, oh, I don't think I'm qualified or whatever. You can feel confident that you have created a safe space and you have the ability to help people integrate their journeys before you say goodbye to them and they walk out the door.
That's perfect. I love it. Someday, when we're allowed to be in person, I understand that you and your husband have 21 acres of beautiful mountain land in the Great Smoky Mountains. Is that a place that people can expect in the future to come and participate or take place in the ship training and the skills training?
Yes, absolutely, Atlantis. We've had people come here for many years,
Mm-hmm.
and we've had so many people pass through these mountains and through the ceremonies here of breathwork and to be trained. And we love to have people here and share the magic and the beauty here. And we're just, happy when that opens up for us to do it again. So we love to share the shamanic breathwork in nature because that's where shamanism began,
Mm-hmm.
is in nature. And it's elemental, and being in the elements heightens the experience even more.
I love it. Well, I know I'm not alone in saying I can't wait to be on the mountain. It's really, I mean, the beautiful thing is that you've been able to offer so much of your work on Zoom when we need it so much right now. But it'll be wonderful for people to have that opportunity if they choose to come and really visit your land and feel the temples and feel the elements and to feel onto that ancient land, the Great Smoky Mountains on the quartz beds. So I know that we're all looking forward to that. And I just wanted to say thank you so much. I really appreciate you putting your heart into this and putting your time into this. And, thank you for everyone who's touched by shamanic breath work to have accepted the challenge and surrendered to being that vessel to let so much learning and knowledge and, all of the juju and the secret sauce and everything come through you because I don't think it's for anyone. I mean, you answered a big calling and we appreciate your work.
Mm. Thank you. My life has been so blessed, and I am so grateful that this has come through me
Mm-hmm.
and gone to places that even I, with my big fat imagination, never imagined. And I'm so grateful that it's touched so many people's lives in the ways that it has. That has touched me more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we'll just keep the spiral path going.
That's right.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Atlantis.
Take care.